Hello everybody and welcome back to another video on my channel. My name is Kevin. I am a miniaturist living in New England, and in this week's video I wanted to work on a technique that I actually have not done before. This is something that I do, if you watch any of my old videos, sometimes when I'm working towards working on a bigger dollhouse diorama eventually, but there's a lot of miniature details. There's a lot of techniques that I don't know very well that I'm trying to learn better before I actually jump into this project. So I'm doing a lot of smaller projects to try out these techniques along the way. My birthday was recently and I was given a gift. It's a little mini Dremel and I have never used one before, so I wanted to come up with some kind of project that would involve that tool. I also wanted to work more with wood. I primarily work with paper-based products like mat board, foam board, but I really like the things that you can create with wood. I like the detail that you can get with wood that I struggle myself to get with paper-based products. I wanted to try doing wood, something out of wood. Granted, this whole thing's not out of wood. You'll see. We'll get into it. I'm gonna turn the camera around. We're gonna go ahead and get started on this week's project. This is actually the present I got for my birthday. I know I said Dremel, but it's a Hardwell brand, but it's the same thing. It's a Dremel tool. It's a drilling tool. I think Dremel's just like the name brand, like Kleenex or Scotch tape. Anyway, I wanted to take a look at what was in here, so I went ahead and just poked around to see what it came with, but I realized before I started using this, I needed to come up with what I wanted to make, which is where this notebook comes in play. I don't go into too much detail on how I came up with this idea, but I basically just looked up some different bookshelves online and came up with some little architectural type add-ons, things that I thought would look nice on it. In the end, I decided to go with the bookshelf because outside of miniatures, I do love to read. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I read a lot of books on my Kindle, or physically I get them from the library. I'm just a reader at heart, and in fact, my first YouTube channel was a writing channel. I like to read, I like to write as well, so I went with the bookshelf. Anyway, I just needed to test how to use this tool. I had no idea how it was going to work on mat board or on popsicle sticks, and you might have seen here at the beginning, but I actually used the wrong grinder at first. I think I used one that was meant for like acrylic or something, but I figured it out. I figured it out that I was using the wrong one, and I switched over to the correct one. And I just needed to test it because I didn't know what to make this bookshelf out of. I really want to try and incorporate wood more into my miniatures. I don't really work with it very often. I work with mat board and foam board and cardstock, and I think that wood can give details that I am not capable myself of doing in paper-based products. So I wanted to try out wood for the first time, and so I wanted to see how this tool would work on wood versus mat board. In the end, it works really well on wood, obviously. Mat board, it does work. It just kind of frays it a little bit, so you have to be aware of that and maybe file it, maybe. I just kind of painted it down and it flattened, but it's not as smooth looking as when you do it with wood. In the end, I decided that I was going to use a mixture of both paper products and wood products in this bookcase. I decided that I was going to make a little box shape out of the mat board and then use wood to do the details that go on the front that make it look more ornate. Here I'm just cutting out the back piece of the bookshelf, and here I am gluing on the sides as well as the top. My first instinct was also to make the shelves in the bookshelf out of wood. I was going to glue 2 popsicle sticks and a tongue depressor together to try and get the depth that I wanted, but I just wasn't liking the curving shape of the popsicle sticks when I glued them together. I tried filling them in with this joint compound and I wasn't liking it. I think maybe in the future, if I could have some basswood or something that I could actually, I didn't have to glue 2 pieces together, I think it would look better, especially because these two weren't the same thickness. So it was a good idea, I think, if I could have pulled it off, but I don't know. I didn't like them. So I ended up taking them out, and then I make the shelves out of mat board as well. When I was doing the sketch, I'd already done the math to try and figure out how far apart all the shelves would be, and to be honest, I just didn't feel like doing that math again. It was like a weird number, and of course I work in inches because I'm in America, and it is not always great when doing these really tiny increments. I should really learn how to do centimeters. Anyway, doesn't matter. I put this on my sketch so that way I could try and put the shelves exactly where they were inside my sketch. Here I am putting on my first wood piece, which is a tongue depressor, and this is where the arch will be once I drill it out. Next was gluing on the side pieces that would kind of frame the front of the shadow box. This is not a shadow box. This is a bookshelf. That would frame the front of the bookshelf. Once that was all dry, I found the center of the top wood piece so that way I could make the arch as even as possible by just eyeballing it. I decided that one of the wood pieces I wanted at the top, I wanted to be rounded on each end. So what I needed to do was cut both ends off a coffee star stick and then glue them together and measure them to make sure it would fit the span of where I wanted them on the bookshelf. I wanted a little bit of a hangover at the top of the bookshelf, almost like a little visor on the top of the bookshelf. I'm not sure what it's called. I'm sure it has an official name in the furniture world, but I wanted a little visor on the top of my bookshelf. So I needed 2 different layers. So what I'm doing here is I cut a popsicle stick that would also span the length of the bookshelf, and I'm gluing the coffee stir stick to the bottom of that, which is where the poles on the side will attach. And I know you haven't seen the poles yet, but you'll see those in a minute. I knew that the wood wouldn't be able to stick to the front of the bookshelf very well, the little visor part, with just a thin strip of glue. So I'm actually making another layer that will go on top of the bookshelf mat board piece, as well as the popsicle wood piece to hold it all together. It does make the top a little too thick, I think, in the end, but I needed the extra sturdiness to make sure that it wasn't going to fall apart. I added glue to the support piece and made sure everything aligned correctly, and then that was all good and done. Next, I broke out my dowel rods from a previous project, measured them out, and cut them. I felt like maybe the bookshelf was a little too boxy, so I wanted to add a little rounded element to it. I mean, besides the archway, obviously. And so I got out the dowel rods to give it a little bit of interest, a little bit more dynamicness. I glued down the 2 side dowel rods, and then it was time to get out the Dremel drilling tool and hope for the best. What I learned very quickly with this drilling tool, grinding tool, whatever you want to call it. Can I call it a Dremel? Is Dremel a brand name, or am I making that up? What I learned using this tool was if you're trying to take out a large piece of wood, do not start with this. Even with the tongue depressor, I needed to go in with some kind of craft knife, which I ended up doing, to cut off chunks of it, because this is more to smooth things out rather than to grind down large areas. So you technically could, I guess, but it will wear down your sanding attachment quickly and you'll have to replace it. So if you want to do a large area, just make sure you're cutting down as much wood as possible beforehand. It was about this time in the grinding process when I realized that this was going to be incredibly hard to paint when it was already assembled. But you know what? It was already assembled, so what was I going to do? Break it apart? Nope, no way. So yeah, that's definitely going to come up later. But I do really like this tool. It's a great tool for sanding down wood really quickly. I could have used this on previous projects. It has multiple different settings to be stronger, which I didn't realize towards the end, and probably could have come in handy earlier. I was just going full force at the full power, but it ended up really working. I really enjoyed this tool, and if you're going to be doing any kind of curves or sanding or wood stuff, I highly recommend you pick up one of these. Doesn't matter what brand, I don't think. I'm assuming it doesn't, because this isn't like I don't know. Is this a name brand? I don't know. What I'm saying is I think any of these would work. If you do this kind of work, definitely consider picking one up. It was totally worth, I was gonna say the investment, but it was a birthday gift, so it was worth it. Here I am after the fact, just brushing it off with a paintbrush because these wood particles do kind of get everywhere. And having said that, make sure you're wearing proper safety gear with goggles, a respirator, or some kind of mask. You know, just be careful. Protect yourself when you're doing crafts. This is me just showing you what the bookshelf looks like. Once it's all put together, it's been sanded. I really like this arch. I'm definitely going to use the sander in the future because I just really like how it turned out. I really like the arch shape. And it was easy. A little bit of a learning curve, but easy. This is where I got torn on what color I was going to go with for the bookshelf. In theory, I think I would have really liked to go with a dark wood stain. If this whole thing was wood, I would have done a wood stain rather than paint. But because part of it is paper, I couldn't. I was really debating between this brown color and this green color that I used in my previous Kermit video. And it just, in the end, the green won out because I like the look of a dark wood bookcase, but I can't mimic wood texture. I don't know how to do it personally. I've tried and I'm just not very good at it. And so I didn't want to risk that. I figured maybe one day I'll take the Kermit shadow box and incorporate this and the bookshelf into a dollhouse or something, and they'll be the same color, so they kind of go together. And it kind of feels like I'm linking the projects together almost. So in the end, I ended up going with the green color. This is where I started to struggle getting the paint in all the different crevices. I think if I were to make this bookshelf again, I would probably paint the pieces before I glue them together, which is what they say to do when making like a dollhouse because of all the intricate little curves. And so I should have really thought of that. I really should have, but I didn't. And so I struggled. I had to get multiple different size like paintbrushes to get into the different little nooks and crannies. And if I look closely, there's probably a space or two where it still is white. And it is what it is, to be honest, because I can't rip it apart. I mean, I could, but I'm not going to. Like, who would at this point? I just did my best. But it took me about 3,000 coats of green paint, probably because I was doing really thin coats. And I'm doing thin coats specifically because in the past, I've done too thick of coats. If you do too thick of a coat in miniature, you can tell. It's like, it looks chunky. I don't know how else to describe it. If you've done it, you know what I mean. It looks chunky. It looks thick. It doesn't look like a nice, even coat of paint. And so I had to do a lot of little tiny layers of the paint. But once all those layers were done, here's what it looked like. It's a flat green color. It's not too chunky. It's mostly even. There are a couple spots, but I am very happy with how it looks. A long time ago on my TikTok, I actually was making a cozy room which had a bunch of books in it. So luckily I had all these books already ready to go. So I printed them out and then started making some books. After making a handful of books, handful, get it? I'm holding a handful. Anyway, there's my dad joke for the day. I'm not even a dad. But after I made a handful of these books, I actually decided I was going to stop making them. I have a bunch of miniatures in my storage that I think would look really good on this shelf, so I didn't want to completely fill it with books. I realized that I wanted to do something else with this bookshelf. I didn't want to just cram it full of all these random books. I feel like I spent a lot of time on this bookshelf making sure it looked really nice, and I really like how it turned out. I end up talking about it in my final clip, but let's go ahead and show you just the finished result for now. That's that for this week. As I said in the voiceover, I stopped making the books because I realized I wanted to do something different with this. I am going to keep it, well, I'm going to keep it a bookshelf, obviously. What am I supposed to do with it? But as I was making these, I remembered that it was a thing that I saw some other people do, I think on TikTok, where as they finished their books they were reading for that year, they would make a mini version of it and put it on a shelf. And I just thought, maybe I'll do that. I haven't read very many books this year, but I tend to read close to 50 books a year, and while I don't think that'll completely fill up this bookshelf, I think it would look cool. And maybe I could just like post some accessories, some other like fun little things on the shelf with the books. But I just realized that as I was filling it up that I don't necessarily want to fill it up with random books. I think I maybe want to do something more important to me, I guess. Overall though, I like how it turned out. I don't know where to put my face. Overall though, I like how it turned out. I mean, there's some little tweaks, you know, that I'd probably make. The lightweight spackling that I have, I think is a little hard to work with. I think maybe I would try wood filler. I've done wood filler a long time ago in the past, but there's something about the dry weight spackle I have that you can't paint over, and I guess I could just prep it first and do a base coat, but I'm just like holding this as I talk. I could go over it, but as much as I love miniatures and doing detailed things, I can be impatient sometimes. So the thought of having to prep a surface like that before painting it again when I already had to do 4 or 5 coats on this seems overkill to me. I know if I was doing a bigger project, I would take the time, but when I'm doing something small like this, I'm just trying out a technique. I don't know, maybe that's what I need to do next time, because I can see where the paint didn't adhere as well to some of the parts that had some of the lightweight spackle on it, which is just strange. I thought it would have gone over fine. I don't know why it did that, but I'm really glad I tried out this technique this week because I like this arch up here. I was nervous to use the sander, and now that I've used it and I like how it turned out, I'm considering using the other attachments, and one of them is like a mini saw, and that kind of freaks me out because it's a literal saw. Like you could like saw into your finger. So that kind of freaks me out, but I kind of want to use it. I don't know what for. Maybe something for the 24 scale cottage that I'm working on or plan to work on soon. Maybe, I don't know. But it's cute. I think it would look good in a dollhouse too if I decide not to go with the idea where I put the books I read for the year on this. Maybe I'll just incorporate into a dollhouse in the future because I think it looks nice. I had to pick up all the books I dropped. Anyway, that's it for this week. I think I might finally start working on the 24 scale cottage next week. I don't know. I'm a little nervous to start on it. I don't know why. I don't work in that scale very often. Trying to shrink things down to that scale just kind of freaks me out. But I don't know. I think I might finally get started on it. But if you have any suggestions for that, you know, I'm still taking suggestions. Please let me know. That's it for this week. Thank you for watching. And if you're here to the end, you know, you're the best. If you like me or you like miniatures, make sure you hit the like button below and the subscribe button below. And I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.